Good evening, everybody. Very nice. School teacher? Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight to our town hall meeting on autism and related disorders. My name is Max Dooley. I'm a parent and on the Area 4 board, also on the State Council for Developmental Disabilities from my board. And I get to be the MC and the remote control for the presentation this evening. First of all, a little housekeeping stuff. So if you haven't signed in yet, please sign in. It was right on the table outside the door. There's also a lot of information on the table out there for other events and that type of thing. So please feel free to pick that stuff up. Restrooms were right at the front door. They would have been on your right-hand side when you walked in the door. I'm like the flight attendant tonight. So emergency exits are down that lane. They are filming this, and it will be posted on the internet sites. It'll be at the Senate Select Committee's website. It'll also be on Senator Wolk's website, and it will be posted at sometime later tomorrow, so if you guys are interested in looking at that. And these PowerPoints will also be there, so if you guys miss anything, you can get them from those websites. I think that's it with that. So, starting off with the best part of my evening, it is my great pleasure to introduce Senator Lois Walk. She's our State Senator Lois Walk, who represents the 5th Senate District, which includes all of Yolo County, as well as portions of Solano, Sacramento, and San Joaquin counties. In her many years of public service, in positions such as Assemblywoman, County Supervisor, and City Council member, Walk has earned a reputation as a problem solver by successfully tackling difficult issue areas including transportation, education, elder abuse, human services, and political reform. Is autism a troubling topic? That's a tough one. Thanks for jumping in for this one. In addition to chairing the Senate Revenue and Taxation Committee and Select Committee on Delta Stewardship and Sustainability, Senator Walk currently serves on numerous committees, including the Select Committee on Autism and Related Disorders, which I'm super glad to have her. She assembled the North Bay Autism Regional Task Force and asked us to share our recommendations today as part of our outreach effort intended to share information and stimulate discussion in communities throughout the state. Please join me in welcoming Senator Lois Walk.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see so many of you here. I think we're going to have a very informative and interesting evening. I want to first of all thank, I have housekeeping too. I want to thank first of all the City of Vacaville. The mayor is here. I want to introduce Len Augustine to you all. And I want to thank Len, the City of Vacaville, for its assistance in providing this wonderful, wonderful facility. And I also need to introduce Supervisor John Vasquez, who represents this area on the Board of Supervisors in Solano. I also need to thank, very important, my Solano representative, Dawn Labar, who has really worked with this task force, and in so many areas she does represent me and does a phenomenal job, and this is just another example. Thank you, Dawn. I want to tell you that in April of 2009, last year, the pro tem of the Senate, Darrell Steinberg, established a select committee on autism and related disorders to set legislative, and he gave it a charge. It was to set legislative priorities to improve the lives of those who are living with autism and their families. Once considered a rare condition, autism is currently the fastest growing developmental disability. It is more prevalent than juvenile diabetes, than childhood cancer, and pediatric AIDS combined. Only 20 years ago, 1 in 10,000 children were affected by autism. Today, 1 in 150 children will be affected. The demand for services has never been greater. As a member of the Senate Select Committee on Autism and Related Disorders, I have appointed a task force made up of knowledgeable, dedicated, and passionate parents, professionals, and other stakeholders in the North Bay area. In recognition of Autism Awareness Month, I have invited them here to give all of you the chance to learn more about this issue and discuss proposed solutions that are being considered by the task force. This group of dedicated volunteers is working to identify solutions to 4 of the most pressing issues for people who are facing autism spectrum disorders: early diagnosis and treatment, insurance coverage, employment, and housing opportunities. And today we're going to hear from the task force on their recommendations on how to address these 4 areas, these 4 challenges. And from Luvis Mara with the Select Committee, with an overview of current legislative efforts to address this health crisis. We'll hear from Chris Allen with the Matrix Parent Network and Resource Center, which provides training and information to parents of infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. I want to thank the task force members who are here today, including task force co-chairs Patrick Mayer and Bob Phillips, as well as our other presenters. And of course, I want to thank all of you in the audience. I encourage you to ask as many questions as you like, to share your thoughts and suggestions with the task force during the public comment portion of this evening's event. But before we continue, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize some companies in this community whose leadership and success in providing job opportunities for individuals with developmental disabilities sets a great example to others in the business community by showing that the developmentally disabled can be productive members of our community. And I'm going to ask them to come forward and receive an award. First of all, I'd like to invite Bruce Masters and Donnie Witt to come forward from Hopkins Honda. For over 15 years, Hopkins Honda has employed numerous individuals with autism or related disorders, at one time employing 3 people with autistic spectrum disorder to work in a 5-person department. In addition to providing employment opportunities, Hopkins Honda has worked closely with job coaches to provide these individuals with the support that they need to be successful. And we were speaking earlier about their program and how successful it has been. And I want to thank you on behalf of the state of California for a terrific program and your energy and commitment to this issue.
All right.
And here you go. Thank you. You're welcome to.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Good job.
Oh.
Get it all in the picture. Okay. Thank you, Lois.
You're welcome to say something if you like.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the Solano Diversified for providing us with a number of different employees through the years here that actually has worked out quite well for us. We tried a little experiment years ago, and it was so successful. We've had several opportunities to put additional staff on through the years, and they're one of the first ones we think of whenever we need to change or add staffing back there. It's a really nice program and a lot of support, and I just wanted to thank everyone that's involved with the program. Thank you.
Secondly, Martin Padilla from Safeway. Come on down. On a nationwide level, Safeway is a leader in providing funding and assistance for individuals with disabilities such as autism. Just in 2009, Safeway raised more than $10 million for 2 national organizations that are focused on people with disabilities, Easter Seals and Special Olympics. The company also supports many local organizations who are focused on job training and placement for people with disabilities. In addition, the company supports families living with a disability by funding independent living programs, play therapy for children diagnosed with autism, and early intervention therapy for children with developmental delays. Martin, I want to thank you for that. Oops, wrong one. Won't do. There go. Thank you on behalf of the state of
Thank you very
California
much.
for everything that you've been doing.
Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words? Get this out of your way.
Thank you, and we proudly accept this award. In Safeway's name, I just want to say that we currently have about 10 employees with disabilities, and they're my best employees. I'm telling you, you can come down the street right now and visit us, and we have some employees. I can name Sarah Speck, who's just a phenomenal employee, and raise your hand in here if you know Sarah Speck. I mean, she's just awesome. Diligent employees, never call in sick, know their job, and do it just outstanding. So I just want to say we're proud to be a part of helping people with disabilities, and thank you for the award. Yeah.
The problem with recognizing anyone is that you always miss someone, and I apologize and would like to introduce to you Superior Court Judge John Ellis. John, where are you? Oh, there you are. Welcome. I don't know if we have recipients for these businesses, but I would like to acknowledge them. Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. All right, let me tell you what they've done. They're a committed employment partner. They've hired and trained transition age youth with disabilities for many, many years. They've directly hired many of the students from the Everest Adult Transition Program for students with developmental disabilities. They have also allowed our support staff to come in and provide job coaching support during the interview, orientation, and training process. And they've been very open to accommodations that better enable these youth to be successful. So I want to thank them for their efforts. We also have an award for CVS Pharmacy. I don't know if they're here now. If they are, please come down. At Plaza Drive and Sonoma Boulevard, their locations in Vallejo, Billy Terrell and Ray Boggs. CVS Pharmacy has partnered with the Vallejo City Unified School District Employment Program to train and hire youth with disabilities. Additionally, CVS Pharmacy has also entered into an MOU with the California Department of Education Workability Program to commit to hiring and training transition age youth with disabilities. So we want to thank them for that. And I believe those are they are the award winners. Please join with me in thanking them for what they do for our state, for our local community, and for the kids. I'd like now to turn this back to Max, and once again, I want to thank you all for the work you do, for being here this evening, and for your commitment to the areas that we're trying to improve for our children and adults in the state of California. Max, it's all yours.
Thank you again, Senator Walk. With your leadership, we are very happy to be lining up behind you and make this thing, let's get rid of this autism thing. I'd be happy about that, so thank you. Next on, and congratulations again to the recipients of the award. We really appreciate you guys taking the chance and really showing what our sons and daughters and brothers and sisters can really do in the community, so thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Now on to Chris. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm leading you in with this. This is a parent's perspective. Oh, it's a perfect topic. Chris Allen, a parent advisor from Matrix. She's a parent advisor at Matrix Parent Network and Resource Center. She is also the mother of 3 children, two of which have autism, or on the autism spectrum. Chris leads a support group for families of children with autism. I'm proud to introduce Chris.
Hi, everybody. Is this okay? Okay, great. All right, I can do that. I've got this microphone. All right, great. So, hi, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. It really means a lot to those of us who have kids on the spectrum to have people like you all who care and who this matters to. And it's wonderful. So thank you. I know I just have a little bit of time, so I'll try to be quick. Let's see. So when I was, my daughter was first diagnosed back in 2002 with autism. She was one of those kids who developed normally and then suddenly just lost all her skills around 18 months old. And around that time, I started reading everything I could. I started researching. It led me to where I am today with my work at Matrix. But when I first started, just back in 2002, I didn't even know anyone with autism. I'd never seen anyone with autism, and I didn't know what the kids even looked like. And I would go to support groups, and the parents would just listen to presentations, and I never got to know anything about anyone's kids. I didn't know what anyone's kids looked like or acted like. So I wanted to take this opportunity to just show you some kids so that we could kind of put some faces with the stuff that we do and the people we're doing this for. So these are my kids. This is Julius over on the far left, and he is 13 years old now, and he has Asperger's syndrome. That's my daughter Sage. She's the youngest one. She's 10, and she has severe autism. We'll talk about her a lot. And then there's Margaret, and she's 11, and she's here today, and she is my autism advocate, and I am so, so proud of her. She does things, amazing things. I tried to find a picture today of her lemonade stand that she's had the last couple years at the Fairfield 4th of July parade. All the proceeds from the lemonade sale go to Autism Speaks, so it's pretty sweet. Since I couldn't find that and I wanted to bring you a visual aid, I had to bring this. Margaret made this 2 years ago. It says, does anybody remember when Michael Savage made those comments on the radio show about people with autism and you know how some of them are probably faking it and all sorts of other offensive things? Well, my kids went with me to protest. We went to San Francisco. We live in Fairfield. Went to San Francisco. We all made signs. And they spent the morning out there in the summer protesting with us, and they each made signs, and I'm so proud of them. So that's just a little bit before I go on and on about the kids with autism. I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. Okay, so here's Sage, and I picked this picture of Sage because she is blowing out her birthday candles for only the second time in her whole life. She is physically capable of doing anything anyone else can do, but for whatever mysterious reason, she doesn't do it. She doesn't use the toilet on her own. She doesn't speak. She doesn't blow out birthday candles. She doesn't do anything that you ask her to do, except for just a few odds and ends. And so this picture really means a lot to me because we just taught her just a couple years ago how to blow out birthday candles. And what I wanted to tell you about Sage was that a lot of what the NBART committee has been doing is really going to help her out a lot. Housing is huge for her. Sage has gotten so hard for us to handle that she, left alone for 15 seconds, she's walked out the front door and disappeared down the street and walked into someone else's house, even with alarms on the doors. Left alone for 30 seconds, she's eaten an entire tube of diaper rash cream. It got so bad and it was so rough with her at home that we actually had to make a horrible, horrible decision and have her move out of our home and into a group home for developmentally disabled kids. And it was heartbreaking. She's been there for about a year now, and she's doing great. And I'm really glad we made that decision. But it was an awful decision to make, and it was so hard. And even with all the supports that I was able to put in place with her at home, it wasn't enough. So I really appreciate everything that's being done to figure out more ways to support these kids and as they grow up into adults and the adults that are already out there, because Sage is going to continue to need a lot of help. Recently, a study came out that it costs between $3 and $5 million a year, or I'm sorry, not a year, $3 to $5 million in a lifetime to care for one child with autism. Sage definitely is on the upper end of that. My partner says that's why we have so many overdraft fees in our checking account. I think she's right. Right now, Sage is in that group home I was telling you about. It costs $4,537 a month for her to live in that group home. And North Bay Regional Center pays the majority of that money. That comes from the state. That's money that comes from the state. And so to me, it really matters to have folks from the state looking at these things and trying to figure out what the best way is to handle the needs of these folks. Sage really will benefit from the work done by the committees on housing and by the committee on insurance, because so much of what she needs really should be covered by insurance. And as it stands right now, almost nothing. And I just described to you a lot of her needs. Almost nothing is covered by insurance. And then I have Julius, and he's my guy with Asperger's syndrome, and he does pretty well for himself. I picked this picture because he's with some retro video games, which was his obsession last summer. So he's real happy there. Kids like Julius need help with things like social skills, and that's the kind of thing for the kids that are higher functioning on the spectrum, what they need. So I'm hoping to see work done in that area as well. Early intervention would have really helped him. There are things, Julius was diagnosed after Sage, because when Sage stopped talking, it was real obvious that something was wrong. And it was only in reading about autism that I started to see all these things that Julius did, that Sage never did, just coincidentally, that were autism things. Julius lined his toys up in a line. Probably a lot of you know that's like a real typical autism thing. I had no idea. He hated textures. He didn't like to touch the grass. He didn't like to be messy. I would have loved to have had early intervention for him. I think that would have, saved us all a little bit of trouble. But he's really not too tough, especially compared to Sage. What's really going to matter for him, besides the early intervention would have mattered, is employment. Because as he gets older, kids like him will be a little bit tougher to employ. And we need employers who understand their literal thinking and how easily they get upset. And then, of course, like Sage is going to need something to do that's really simple and basic. And but I don't want her to just spend all day flipping a ribbon, which is what she would do if I let her. So I don't want her to do that. So just a little bit about, these are some organizations you've probably heard of before. And what I wanted to tell you about them, and I have it printed out because I knew I'd forget, is that these are all organizations started in California by parents. So all of these organizations were started by parents of kids with autism, except for Matrix. Matrix is parents of kids with disabilities, not necessarily autism. So we've got Autism Speaks, founded by Bob Wright and his wife Suzanne, a year after their grandson was diagnosed with autism. We've got the Mind Institute, which was started by a group of parents to raise funds for autism, to become a premier autism research institute. And Chuck and Sarah Gardner were some of the parents whose son Chaz has autism. And then Taka, which was started by Lisa Ackerman when her son was diagnosed. And so that's another one of the huge autism groups right now. But as far as, so the point of this is just those of you who are parents or who know parents, we can do big stuff. We can really make changes. And so I'm really want to encourage everyone to try and find just a little bit of time to work on this, because there's so much work that needs to be done, and our kids really, really need it. And then so Matrix is where I work, and just very quickly, our mission is to empower families of children with special needs to successfully understand and access the systems that serve them. And we do that in a lot of different ways. let's see. We were founded in '83. We're 25 years old now. Founded by parents of kids with special needs, and staffed by parents of kids with special needs. And we serve families from birth all the way up to age 26, and we cover 4 counties, including Marin, Napa, Sonoma, and Solano County. And it's all different kinds of special needs. Just like everywhere else, autism is really growing, so about 25% of our services go to families of kids with autism. We offer a lot of services. They're all free, and they're all offered bilingually. We have a helpline. We have support groups. I do a support group in Fairfield for parents of kids with autism. We have workshops. We consult individually with parents. We have a Yahoo group online with about 230 parents who are all right here in the 4 counties that we serve. We have an e-newsletter, and our website has access to all of our information. And that includes this, which you might have seen out front. This is our little brochure we made. We recently had an event and had Temple Grandin come and speak at Matrix, and we made this for that event. It's got autism resources from around the area and recommended websites. And then there's information about our support groups. So if that's something that interests you or that you want to pass along, feel free to grab several and pass them along. Oh, push the wrong button. So all of our services are free. Like I said, we're funded by the Department of Education as well as grants and donations. So I would be remiss if I did not let you know how you could help us out. And then just thank you so much. Thanks. Please remember as we go through today, the people behind all the statistics, the people behind all the work we're doing, because it matters so much to them. And from my 2, Sage and Julius, they say thank you. Thanks.
This one's still. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. All right. Now on to another one of the founding members of the Mind Institute, one of the other parents that got that started and put together. On the topic of legislative efforts to address the autism public health crisis, Dr. Lou Bismara, one of my heroes, policy consultant, Senate Select Committee on Autism. Dr. Bismara.
Well, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure and privilege to be here. I will be very, very brief. Although my topic is legislation, the message is going to be a very simple one. For legislation to be effective, we desperately need your help. We need not only the help of everyone in this room, but we need you to partner with the great leadership that's provided by Senator Woke and other members that are here today, both elected and staff and volunteers. So this is only going to work with your participation. I'm going to ask you all to consider doing 3 simple things. Number 1, contact us, connect with us. There are basically a number of ways you can do it. You can click on the autism website for the Senate Select Committee. Senator Woke has a district office website that is also linked. My contact information is on the slide and will be posted. I answer my own phone. I am very compulsive about answering emails, and I would love to hear from you. So please contact us one way or the other. Number 2, please let us know what you think. All too often, it's the priest talking to the choir. For us to succeed in legislation and the other endeavors that we all care about, we wouldn't be here tonight if we didn't care about it. We absolutely need to communicate effectively. So let us hear from you. Number 3, we're all aware of the incredible statistics with regards to the epidemic of autism. To put it in a personal perspective, when our son, Mark, who's pictured there on the right-hand corner, was diagnosed with profound autism at 18 months of age, and that was in 1995. The number of consumers that were regional center clients at that time was 4,700. Just a few days ago, I checked with DDS, and the number of consumers that are regional center clients now is approaching 47,000. Yes, 47,000, from 4,715 years ago to 47,000 now. Now, what's even more alarming is the validated information that regional centers are only serving about 20% of all individuals who are on the spectrum. So autism is truly epidemic. However, I would also offer and share with you that as severe and epidemic autism is, it's really more than that, because I truly believe that because of the complex nature of autism, because of the services that it requires, because of what we're advancing and understanding about brain science, autism can also be something that can engage and involve a broader audience. If we think right now that 1 out of 100 individuals has autism, it basically means that 99 out of 100 kids, even with my simple math skills, so there are 99 kids without autism. And yet think of how many children who have other types of social emotional problems, who have behavioral and conduct, who have learning disabilities. Think of potentially how those families can also be engaged, involved, and become partners in the fight to make a better life for all children. So I would argue that autism is like a periscope. Oftentimes, as parents, we feel like we're underwater, we're in a hole, we're drowning. But by understanding autism, by looking at it from a global perspective, from a holistic approach, let's try to involve individuals who care about who care about early education, who care about various types of behavioral disorders, and let's partner together in supporting the legislation that leaders like Senator Wolk are desperately trying to create a better future for all of our children. We have to do that. We must come together. And when you look at so many of the social issues that are making the 6 o'clock news, that are on Sean and Hannity or on Rush Limbaugh or whatever, people come together and they polarize around certain issues. I would offer that for our family, having a future that makes a better life for all of our children is something that I think is critically important. And again, let's try to get that message out there to like-minded individuals who really care and are committed to having a better future for all of our children. In the next few slides, I would like to just basically provide a little bit of background about some of the legislative efforts that have led to tonight's meeting, both directly and indirectly. Back in 2005, Senator Parada, who was at that time the pro tem, convened a legislative Blue Ribbon Commission on Autism. Again, this was a unique group of volunteers and advocates and experts that, again, were not only from among the autism community, but also brought together individuals who were from business, from public policy, from government. And frankly, about half of those individuals had not had a prior experience with autism spectrum disorders as such. But together, this group, over a period of several years, including many community outreach and town hall meetings, published a report with specific recommendations. Again, that is also still evident on the website. If you're interested in finding out about some of the recommendations that it came up with, primarily in terms of identifying problems. And the problems that it focused on and looking at gaps and barriers to services, again, were in the area of early identification and treatment, in the area of insurance coverage, in the area of education, in the area of employment and housing. And there's an executive summary that is just very, very readable. What was also very impressive about the efforts of this group is that it was not merely an important report, but for many of us, it was a report that led to specific outcomes and actions. All too often, when commissions or committees or groups are convened, they publish these wonderful 500-page reports that nobody reads. Well, this commission was dedicated to real outcomes, and so in 2008 it came up with an autism legislative package. 8 of the 9 bills were passed, 4 were signed into law, and specific outcomes, again, were a direct result of the work that went on with this group. Again, the same type of dedicated, focused, almost laser-like approach is also being brought to the work of the Senate Select Committee and the task forces such as the North Bay Autism Regional Task Force. Again, the charge of this group is around the 4 specific areas that have already been mentioned. We're very pleased that this is a bipartisan committee that includes 15 esteemed senators, leaders of the Senate from both parties throughout the state. It represents a broad geographic mix, and frankly, it brings together individuals who have diverse political background and opinions. But this committee is dedicated and focused on tackling the issues at hand. The committee is supported by works of 12 regional task forces that are very similar in approaches, composition, and charge, such as NBART. There's one in Sacramento, 4 in the Bay Areas, 2 in the Central Valley, 2 in Los Angeles, 1 in Orange County, 1 in the Inland Empire, and 1 in San Diego. The members of the volunteers who comprise these task force range anywhere from high 40s to almost 90 in Los Angeles. Again, this is a work in progress, and if you're interested in participating and contributing and being involved, please let us know, and we'd love to bring you up to speed in terms of what's happened and partner with you in terms of future activities. These are the issues that you're going to be hearing more about during the presentation. In addition to the task forces, the Senate Select Committee is working on a number of other issues which are briefly outlined here. A specific next project that is going to take place is a Senate Select Committee on Insurance that Senator Woke and Senator Steinberg and other committee members will be holding. It has been scheduled for June 10th from 10:30 to 12:30 in the state capitol. And again, information on this specific hearing will be posted on the website. Again, in closing, 2 of my favorite sayings, that the dignity, hope, opportunity, and love are the birthright of all individuals, and that never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. I thank you for being here and look forward to working with all of you in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Smara. Next on, we have our recommendations from our NBART work groups. The first up is going to be Andrew Bailey with ANOVA, and he's going to be doing early identification and treatment. And I'm running to change slides.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. My name's Andrew Bailey. I'm the co-chair of the Early Identification and Treatment work group from the NBART, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the recommendations that we've developed over the last 6 to 8 months, and also some of the recommendations of the statewide coordinating council, which is the group that oversees this group. So if you could, I guess you're the slide guy. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but the current challenge number 1 is difficulty obtaining an appropriate evaluation and referral for autism spectrum disorder from your primary healthcare provider. Has anyone had that problem? Okay, that's what we thought. The Blue Ribbon Commission realized this. We realized it very early on, and it's still a problem. So our recommendation is pretty obvious, but needs to be accomplished anyway. Develop, improve, and implement an effective and ongoing screening process that approaches universal screening for children 12 to 60 months and possibly even earlier. That's going to take a lot of work. And to do that, to accomplish those tasks, there are a number of barriers that need to be overcome. And they are several: establishing community-based screenings in underserved areas through collaborations that include volunteers and other professionals. If parents of children with autism can't come to the systems of care, then the systems of care need to go to the communities that are in need, and that's what that is about. Developing opportunities to partner with child care and preschool professionals, paraprofessionals, and organizations to point out children that are at risk or in need of an assessment or screening. Establishing common diagnostic tools, criteria, and eligibility requirements for school districts and regional centers so parents aren't confused by different eligibility criteria, different systems of care, and different language even. Partnering with pediatricians, primary care providers to include the evaluation of autism spectrum disorders and related disorders as an integral component of the medical home model. In other words, having it be part of the regular screening that all doctors just automatically do, and that parents are taught about it just like they're taught to look for common routine childhood illnesses. We all, as parents, strive to have healthy children, and if we can convince our doctors to help us with that, then that would be a good thing to accomplish. So if you can go to the next slide. Use of telemedicine, I know, is a big one for a number of the people on this committee. Video conferencing, other technological advances to enhance and improve the existing systems of care. Anyone who has Facebook or Twitter or knows about Skype or any of the other technologies out there today knows that perhaps not a full assessment, but at least some sort of initial contact could be accomplished through these video and other electronic technologies. Partnering with medical groups and healthcare organizations to provide resources that will improve professional development. Doctors and other professionals need to know more about autism, and that could come from the ground up. Working with healthcare providers to promote the appropriate reimbursement by private health plans for screening and diagnosis. If there are any doctors in the audience, they're probably thinking that's a good idea, since we all work and we all work hard, and doctors want to get reimbursed reasonably for the services they provide, and that includes screening and assessment for autism. Providing information to primary healthcare providers on the early signs of autism spectrum disorder that's culturally sensitive. We know that different cultures include different behavioral presentations, and when you're looking at autism, especially the subtle signs early in life, those cultural things need to be taken into consideration, and families that don't have English as a first language certainly need to be included in any outreach efforts. Developing a standardized assessment and intake process between regional centers and primary care providers that improves efficiencies, maintains appropriate standards, and provides greater cost effectiveness. That's a lot of words to say that people need to talk to each other and have a common language and hopefully a common outcome in mind. Next slide. Difficulties in coordinating services and care between the regional centers and school districts for children 0 to 5. Anybody have a problem with that? There's a few people here. I know that I've heard a lot of parents describe difficulties, even with the most well-meaning professionals with school districts and regional center. Again, if they're speaking different languages and operating from different systems, the best intentions can't always get through to providing the most effective available treatments. So what we'd like to do is try to develop and operate effective regional collaboratives that include responsible agencies, public and private, parents, consumers, and all interested stakeholders, to provide better early ID and treatment. And that means something along the lines of the autism community team here in the North Bay, where regional centers, school districts, parents, area boards, private providers, all of us meet on a regular basis to establish a feeling of community and a sense of a common goal. So even in times like now, when there's not a lot of money, we can still maintain that heat to keep that going. And that's very important. And I think that the areas that have these collaboratives are going to be ahead of the game when there is some additional resources that return to the state in the next few years. And that is really, I think, very important. And I know that the Blue Ribbon Commission talked about these collaboratives as well. And I think this area is lucky enough to have a really fully functioning one of those right now. To provide greater flexibility in assessment services and funding by school districts. Right now, there are a lot of rules and regs, and this is easier said than done, obviously. All of these are. establishing complementary and synergistic treatment plans between regional center and school districts. Again, more coordination, providing the option for regional centers on a voluntary basis to provide services on a conditional basis and defer intake for a permanent client status until the consumer is 5 years of age. Again, difficult to understand. It essentially loosens the regulations a little bit to allow the systems of care, particularly regional center, to serve kids that may not otherwise qualify, and to avoid having to qualify them later in life for more expensive and intensive treatment, prevention, preventing cure necessary down the road. Provide options for providing greater flexibility, enabling school districts and regional centers to combine their assessment and treatment plans into a single document. And I don't know if that will happen anytime soon because of federal law and state law, but I know with the collaboratives that we're talking about here in the North Bay, the school districts and regional centers work routinely together to have school districts help with IPPs and regional center staff helping with IEPs, so everyone is working off of the common goal and motivation, if not a singular document. Another challenge is a lack of clear, definitive, unified, and effective source of information and assistance about the assessment and treatment of autism. One of the legislative pieces that came out of the Blue Ribbon Commission was a clearinghouse, and that didn't go into effect, and I don't know if that will be revisited, but something along those lines where we can deliver and develop and deliver a unified and effective message to the general public about autism. Those 99 out of 100 who don't have a child with autism but who are affected by it and don't really know how and should. In addition to specific evaluation, treatment, and education information to those in need of assistance. And that means developing opportunities to create partnerships between the child care and preschool professionals and the medical practitioners and other agencies that provide treatment and care for children with autism. Leveraging resources within the existing programs currently in place in colleges, universities, and other organizations of higher education that improves these linkages, again, more toward the collaboration line. So everyone, all the stakeholders, anyone who could potentially benefit or be affected by the treatment is involved. Engage and involve organizations that are considered to be community thought leaders, cultural groups, faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and business enterprises. This Senate Select Committee is an example of something like that that should be continued here on out, even without the presence of this kind of Senate committee. Establish parent advisory groups and mentors that improve communication among existing resources such as regional centers, school districts, family resource centers, and other agencies. Advisory groups that are run by parents are a good idea. I think you guys all would support that. And charter schools are coming up all around the country with that in mind. And I think when it comes to children with autism, no one knows better than their parents. Examine what has worked for other model demonstration sites. Can we establish some metrics about what has worked? Model programs could be published on the website. So let's go out and look at what's there and what has been effective preliminarily and try and replicate that in other areas around the state in a way that's cost neutral. Okay, that's all I have to say. And if there's any questions or feedback, the public comment period is coming up after all of this is done. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up is medical insurance coverage by this guy, Max Dooley, and Dr. Robert Horan. And Dr. Horan will do the presentation. There you go, my friend.
Thank you. I've got some housekeeping things too here, Max.
Filling for my needs.
And I don't want you to forget this. My wife and Max's wife were at the same rally, and I still have my Fire Savage shirt. So, all right. I picked this slide to kind of start out the task force's recommendation about health insurance. I think as parents and as consumers, what people have experienced more than anything is the insurance two-step. That is, once their insurance gives you a reason for denial for a service, then you kind of look into the research and find out why that's not the case. Go back to insurance, and there's a new reason to deny the service or deny the coverage. So one of the approaches to the insurance company has been lawsuits and class action suits. And let me just read what the California Supreme Court Justice said. It's not whether the therapy sought by the plaintiff, which is parents with kids with autism, were medically necessary, but whether the defendant discriminated against autistic children by categorically denying the treatment. Kaiser, and I don't want to just pick on them, but Kaiser claims that one of the requested treatments, known as applied behavioral analysis, is not covered because not performed by a licensed physician, and that the other requested therapies were non-medical. So this is like iteration 4 out of 10 on why to deny services. So not only has it been difficult for parents to get screenings, to be told by their pediatricians that it's something other than something they'll grow out of, it's been difficult to get services for all of us. And I think, does anyone had? Okay. There's a lot of emerging models, and a lot of those emerging models take time to establish empirically, to have scientific data to go behind them. And so things like the Denver model and RDI and things that are really helpful for parents and really helpful for raising kids with autism, it takes forever to get them established, and then there's reasons for insurance to dance around it until it's finally established years and years down the road after our kids are too old to benefit from them. So our approach is to say, stop the two-step. How can we make this dance stop so that our kids can get services? So a couple of the ways that it's already established by the state are the Department of Managed Healthcare and Department of Insurance have regulatory responsibility. Their job is to take a look at insurances, and if there's complaints from parents, insurance holders, they're to investigate them and solve grievances that occur between the insured insurance companies. DMHC and DOI at this point haven't done a good job at defining what should be covered and what is needed and what insurances should provide. So we need them to do that so the dance stops. One of the ways that insurance stops covering things is saying that, well, they're not covered by doctors, or they're not medically necessary, or they're not this, or they're not that. So by establishing the qualification standards for people who can provide the services, the therapies, we can stop that dance as well. We need the grievance process to be a lot quicker. So instead of grievances being pushed forward months, years, postponed, etc., we need the grievances to be handled within 30 days and to start setting precedents that way instead of every family spending money on lawyers and everything else to try to get through a grievance process. Okay.
You made me too comfortable.
You're listening? Okay. Max and I work on the area board, and we're pretty comfortable with each other, and our wives are best friends. So, for regional center, I think it's the job. We could use help from regional center when a child is diagnosed, to kind of give parents some information on what to do with insurance companies, as the regional centers are trying to push back to insurances to cover more things. Parents need to know what regional center will cover, what they won't, what insurance companies should cover, and what to do if there's denials. Even some information on grievance and appeals would be helpful. There's a hearing coming up June 10th. And parents, if you can be there, I know it's hard to get away, and I know it's hard to get the babysitting and so forth. But Lou, the time of the hearing? 10:30 at the state capitol. It's Daryl Steinberg, the Senator Pro Tem, talking to the Department of Managed Healthcare and talking to some of the insurers and asking them for answers. Why is it this way? How are you addressing these problems? How are you addressing the needs that are there? The next bullet is some of the questions that are already, guess we'll get to that. It's some of the questions that are going to be asked that are already prepared to ask insurers and the Departments of Managed Healthcare and the Department of Insurance. So what we're asking for in that meeting is these two main bullet points: that we address the delay tactics by insurance companies, that the shifting reasons for denying services end, that there's a recognition that experimental services or experimental treatments, that sort of label, we need to maybe soften our standards because our kids are aging out before the science gets there. And we need to address the appeals and grievance procedures. And I guess having insurers understand that autistic disorders, kids with autism are treatable, they have a brain-based illness, and the services are cost-effective. So going on to the questions. I know you probably can't read that from out there, but as Max mentioned, the PowerPoint's going to be on the Senate website. You could probably enlarge this on your computer or whatever. But these are all important questions for the insurance company to address, for the Department of Managed Healthcare to regulate, and we need your questions too on the 10th. So that's my pitch. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for the chair. That helped. Next up on housing, we have Mary Ebel and North Bay Housing Coalition and Pamela Madden. Oh, they put you after the, okay, we'll go training. Mix you all up. So training and employment, Joyce Montgomery from Vallejo Unified School District, and Keith, is Keith, okay. And Keith, Dr. from Toro University.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Joyce Montgomery. I'm with Vallejo Unified School District, and I coordinate our transition employment services for youth with disabilities, middle school through adult. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the recommendations that the Statewide Coordinating Council has put together and approved as preliminary recommendations. The stigma towards employees with developmental disabilities being a barrier, and that appropriate and accurate information needs to be presented to employers to make decisions about employment. That there needs to be an anti-stigma campaign in the K through 12 school system to educate our youth regarding autism and employment issues, as well as implementing a Stop the R Word, and I think we all can guess the R word there, campaign, and promoting mentoring and volunteerism in the school systems. Also, a lack of incentives to hire individuals with developmental disabilities, such as establishing employment awards, such as the one that was given out tonight by Senator Lois Walk, developing targeted consumer supports, employment tax credits for employers to hire people with disabilities, addressing the lack of supports and funding for micro enterprises and small businesses, and looking at ways to fund such activities by partnering with local chambers of commerce, offering pre-tax savings accounts, or clarifying them, and exploring the applicability of the Federal Workforce Investment Board and how those funds could be accessed for those services. Also, the inadequate coordination and integration of employment support services. We all know that that's a big barrier that we face when we're trying to place people out into the community and jobs, is the lack of a coordinated effort and creating a clearinghouse of sorts for that one-stop programs. In the next slide, we have some of the questions that our initial NBART work group put together to address the issues of employment for people with autism and related disorders. And we have made quite a bit of ground over the last 6 to 8 months on these. And the one that has really came to the top for us has been the very first recommendation, or the first question that we were asking about sheltered workshops and supported employment. And I'm going to have Dr. Keith Story come up and share with you our recommendations and our preliminary findings.
Excuse me, I have allergies. So I'm Keith Story. I direct the special ed program at Toro University. I have to put a plug in. We just started a master's in autism spectrum disorders. So if you're interested, you can talk with me and I can give you some information about that. The unemployment rate among adults with disabilities in the United States has been 70% for about 40 years. And so it hasn't changed over that time. And for adults with developmental disabilities, it ranges from estimates of 80 to 95% unemployment rate. So we've done a very poor job of getting people real jobs. And over 400,000 people in the country with developmental disabilities are being paid sub-minimum wage, earning less than minimum wage. And the increase into segregated day programs has increased 125% from 1988 to 2001. So we're seeing an increase of people who are graduating from the school system who are not going into work, they're going into segregated programs. And what we've set up over the years is a system where the intention was to put people into sheltered workshops and day programs and get them ready to work. And that over time they would learn skills and be able to hold a real job. About 3.5% of the people who enter the sheltered workshop day program system actually get a real job at the end of that time period. So it's a system that doesn't work. The average wage in a sheltered workshop is $65 per week, so people are not earning real money. Sorry, I have my notes because Joyce told me I had to say all these things, so I want to make sure so she doesn't get mad at me afterwards. So the idea was that people need to get ready to work, and that through the system they will get ready to work. Well, it's been obvious for 30 years for those of us who have been around in the system that long that it doesn't work. There's a lot of research to back it up. So the idea since about the early mid-1980s has been the idea of supported employment, that we want people to have real jobs in the community where they're earning at or above minimum wage, they're getting benefits from that job, and that they get appropriate supports on the job. So that's why it's supported employment, because people may need different supports. But the research indicates that people who go into supported employment have better quality of life outcomes, better wages, better benefits. They're better in the normalization process. They're valued as they're seen as more valued members of society. They influence society in a positive way, so employers are more likely to hire people. It helps individuals through stress and difficulties, gives them economic independence and lifelong learning. So we see supported employment as being kind of the goal for what we want. And the California State Council on Developmental Disabilities has seen that as a goal. And through various discussions that we've had through our committee and with others through the area board, the regional center, we have this first kind of recommendation as we see as the key to what needs to happen. We have a system that doesn't work. It's not good at getting people jobs. It's never worked. And it's not going to work unless we change it. And this is our opportunity to change it. And so what we think we need to have happen is to change how things are funded. So we need to change the rate system under service codes away from work activity programs into supported employment. So it wouldn't be new funds, it would be a shifting of funds in the regional center system away from the work activity programs into supported employment. So we'd see a rate increase in supported employment services and a rate decrease for work activity programs. And if we can make that happen, we'll have an impact on many, many people with autism throughout the state. And as we look at the other areas for early childhood, housing, and insurance, in a lot of ways, the key is employment. So for these important initiatives to work, the employment is the key piece. So we need people to have real jobs in the community, and that's our goal. It's the goal of the state of California, and so on. So we think that this proposal will be very effective in making that happen. So, thank you.
I feel like I've been spending 8 years working on my master's degree in autism spectrum disorders already, so now you officially are doing one. More of a PhD, yes. Thank you both very much. Now on to housing with Mary Ebel from North Bay Housing Coalition and Pamela Madden-Krall from North Bay Regional Center.
we're going to do the tag team method here. So we actually have 4 issues we're going to touch on, and part of this has come through collaborating with different work groups, housing work groups throughout the state. So there are actually 4 issues, and I'll just tell you what they are, then we'll go through them in more details. And then what you're going to see on we split it up into legislative recommendations and local or regional recommendations, because our charge has been to the Senate Select Committee to give them some very specific recommendations that they can enact through legislative action. But there are also a lot of things we can do locally and regionally, so we split it up that way. So the first issue we're touching on is the lack of incentives for developers and builders. Is this on? It doesn't feel like it's on. Okay. So the second one is going to be lack of stable housing for regional center consumers. The third is lack of information, data, and coordination of services. And finally, lack of adequate funds and resources. So the first one being lack of incentives for developers and builders. And I appreciate what Keith said about employment being really key, because people who are living on fixed incomes cannot afford to live on their own. They cannot afford, those of us who have good jobs, it's even difficult to find affordable housing in safe, decent areas. So it's really critical to support developers to create the affordable housing piece. So how do you do that? So we're trying to eliminate the red tape, give them incentives, development fees, housing tax credits. So these are right now just very general framework we're going to present to the Senate Select Committee. I believe in September is our final recommendations. And you'll see one of the recommendations later on is to convene a housing summit with the other work groups so we really nail down these recommendations. We also want to recognize those developers and builders who are doing the job out there now.
And so, I'll go ahead and just do this. Along the same lines, is that working okay then? Along the same lines, the recognizing at the local level developers and people who are creating affordable housing options, that is something that we can do at a local level that doesn't necessarily require legislative action. It's really important when we're looking at all of this stuff that the regional center system in and of itself was a grassroots system that was developed by parents coming out and saying, we want change. And the Lanterman Act was developed by parents, and we have the ability locally to influence a lot of work to create and make things happen as a community. And that's one of the things that we also want to emphasize as part of this housing, for us to be able to go out and make things happen in our communities. Like, for example, recognizing developers who are putting affordable housing in place for folks. And partnering with local nonprofits. Very often we work in these silo systems where people aren't leveraging multiple resources and collaborating, and we need to look at various nonprofit organizations, look at the target populations, how do we collaborate together to leverage funding to identify affordable housing models where there are very few resources.
Second issue is lack of stable housing for regional center consumers. Legislative recommendations would be something, Lexi Home Donation. Let me just describe briefly what that is. Several of us throughout the state have been working on the idea of a home donation program for families who have a home that they don't know what to do. What happens, that ultimate question, what happens when I'm not around anymore to care for my child, either through my own disability or my death. So North Bay Housing Coalition and several other nonprofits in the state have been looking at this for a while, of how can we meet that need? How can we work with families and provide some education and support? And if families say, well, I want my child and my child wants to continue living in their home, their family home, how can we support that? So that's what Legacy Homes is. And just I guess this time we have time to talk, don't we, Bob? Because usually housing is last and we get crammed. So I can expand this discussion a little bit about legacy homes. When we first started looking at it about 5 years ago, there was a model we're replicating from Wisconsin, and Eunice Kennedy Shriver called that agency and said, you should do something in California. So they said, talk to my son, Bobby Shriver. So we did, and we were charged to go back to him with a business plan. We really want to take advantage of Maria Shriver being the First Lady of California right now. And even though this is something that's not going to require any money, because that was one of the things we were also charged with, it'd be great to have a joint resolution from the Assembly and the Senate saying support this concept of a legacy homes and ways we can streamline it throughout the state. So we'd like for this to be something that if someone is living in Napa or in Fairfield or Vacaville and wants to move to Southern California, like my nephew loves Disneyland, and so he may want to move to Anaheim, how can we make it very easy and flexible amongst ourselves to make that happen? So we want to recommend a joint resolution for the Legacy Home Donation Program and give some incentives to donors as well. We don't know exactly how that will look, but that's part of what our charge is, to figure this stuff out, whether a tax benefit or a tax credit or something to make it another incentive to families to do this. No reassessment on property taxes for homes given to consumers. Right now for Prop 13, there's no reassessment from parent to child. But what if a grandparent wants to leave it to the grandchild, or what if I want to leave it to my nephew with Down syndrome? Then there'll be a reassessment. So I think for us to think about how we can look at those kind of issues. Support SB 1175. Earlier, Lou showed that that's already been signed into law, but there's still some work that needs to be done to put legs underneath this legislation.
And then at the regional local level, identifying and supporting successful housing models. The ARCA, the Association of Regional Center Agencies, they have developed a best practices brochure where they've looked at multiple housing models that have been developed throughout the state and have published that. So it is our charge to make sure that that information gets out, but also using that as a launch pad to look at what other kinds of housing models are out there that can be developed above and beyond the models that they have looked at. Again, nonprofit agencies developing programs and including the futures planning. That's part of something that North Bay Housing Coalition also is working on through the Pathway, correct me if I'm wrong, program to bring families together and really start develop some long-term futures planning. And then, again, making more vouchers, more Section 8 vouchers available. Cities, the housing authorities in the cities have some ability to leverage and identify how in their plan they're going to roll out those Section 8 housing vouchers, and we need to develop relationships with those housing authorities and get in there and try to sway them to make more available for the folks that we are serving.
In fact, we're doing that right now where there's a NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, for non-mentally disabled. So we're working with Vacaville and all the 9 different housing authorities in our 3-county area to encourage them and to support them in the application of additional vouchers. And for those of you who don't know what a Section 8 voucher is, it's gold. If you get these, it's gold, because it means that you have the ability, essentially even on limited income SSI, to afford to live in a decent apartment, because this housing authority would subsidize your rent. So as much as possible, get on the waiting list.
It's 3 to 5 years.
Or longer. Whenever, talk to me, make sure you're on our email list, because I'll let you know as I hear about a waiting list that are open to get on it. So it's really key. We put that in the local side because it's a federal program, not really something the state can do. Okay, the third issue, lack of information, data, and coordination of services. At this time, there is legislation going through SB 812. Each jurisdiction has to complete a housing element that basically says this is how we're going to create affordable housing in our city or in our county. And so SB 812 is very specific to direct the cities and counties to say, put something in your housing element specifically about the need of housing needs of people with developmental disabilities. So we want to support that.
And then at the local level, we have found, again, lack of information. We've talked about developing something like a statewide kind of questionnaire or a statewide way to identify what exactly are our are our housing needs, and how are we going to develop stuff that speaks specifically to those needs. So something like maybe a questionnaire, and then developing a database that would identify what are all the housing choice models that are available for folks throughout the state. And then a housing summit. And that is something, because we are task forces throughout the whole state, what we'd like to do is in, I guess, September or October, possibly develop a statewide summit where we can share all of our statewide housing information and what we are recommending and what's happening in different communities, and really share our resources. And then incorporate, housing into the individualized transition plans. That is something that is really important that we're already doing to some extent on the local level now, working with our transition teams in Sonoma and Solano County to really identify what part of the transition plan, no, not what part, but how do we fit housing into the transition plan and really bring the conversation to the forefront of that planning? Very often, transition is so overwhelming for parents. The idea of just finding a job and you know what my child's going to do when they get out of high school. The thought of housing can fall way down on the list of priorities, navigating this whole complex system of transition. Well, how do we start bringing the housing conversation into that, especially knowing things like it's going to be 3 to 5 years, even if you do get on the waiting list for a Section 8 housing. Before that even comes up, your child might be 28, 29 years old before the housing option comes up. How do we help prepare families in that transition process already at the age of 21, 22, 23 to prepare for that? So we are working together to develop being part of the transition teams to get that in place. And then also the housing and the IPP. Again, that's another place where we can be looking at what is the regional center's role in the development of the long-term housing plan. How can we help identify what service needs and supports might be available for the person to live a more independent and productive life? What is our role? And that is something that the IPP can address. Oh, and then, to be continued, again, identifying supports for families whose child continues to live in the home, like Chris was just talking about. How can we address those needs that allow families to keep their children living in the home? And we've talked about developing curricula for colleges and universities. It sounds like you guys are already doing some of that at Touro University. What do people in the special ed credentialing program, what do those new teachers need to know about housing options and how they develop that into their curriculum with working with the students that they're working with in the high school? High quality staff for support and services. Again, that's us also looking at what skills and abilities do the support staff need to have who are working with kids and families. Again, in the individualized housing plan, and this might be a good time for you to talk a little bit about what that is about.
North Bay Housing Coalition is working closely with Regional Center to begin to offer individualized housing plans, or IHPs. So we've done workshops in the past, and in fact, again, we're collaborating with monthly workshops and different topics, but we found that sometimes you get overwhelmed with all the information that comes at you, and to be able to take someone by the hand and say, let's really look at what's going on in your family, person-centered planning, where are the waiting lists, where can you get on a list, what are you thinking about, have you talked to other people in your circle? Sometimes as family members, you may just get, I'll do it, I'll just take care of it all, and what if something happened to you, what happens to your loved one? I mean, I'm looking at June because she knows my sister is a fierce advocate for my nephew. Don't mess with Martha, right? But if something happened to Martha, I need to know what's going on, or my brother needs to know what's going on. So how do you really support families in that sense? So that's what the individualized housing plan would be about. And beyond that, we're talking about individualized lifespan plan. That's a model we're looking at in Canada. If you want to check out www.plan.ca, it's a great model of how do you build a network of people around your loved one? Because you may have a plan, but that plan's only good for right now, and tomorrow may be very different, and then a year from now it's very different. So how do you build a network of people around you to keep that plan alive and breathing? So those are, I mean, we talk about housing as kind of nuts and bolts, but it's a lot more than just that. So these are some of the things, services that we see are being important for the housing piece of things. Is this the last one?
Yeah.
So the last one is lack of adequate funds and resources. Yeah, big one. Something we're talking about, you may be familiar with the College 529 program. That's where families can set aside money for college. So we want to be able to look at a similar model, except this would be for a tax benefit for families who put aside money for housing. It's a federal program. So again, maybe like a joint resolution that the state would put out to the feds. Each jurisdiction has to have, I think it's 20% of their redevelopment funds goes for affordable housing. So we want to be more specific and say set aside 5% of that 20% to extremely low income. In the housing development world, they talk in terms of income levels. And people with developmental disabilities would tend to, SSI only would tend to be on the extremely low income bracket. So it's really hard to develop that kind of housing. So we want to encourage the jurisdictions to set aside 5% of their redevelopment money for extremely low income developments.
We want them to know that this is a win-win. We can support the cities. Sometimes they have difficulty meeting that extremely low income criteria and spending their money. We want them to know that we can support them in doing that and provide them with the individuals who fit that extremely low income model and the services and supports that we can provide with that person to enable them to keep the property, maintain it, contribute to the community. So it really creates a win-win for the cities. They just need to know that we're here and we can support them.
Again, developing a permanent source of affordable housing and a replication of a Cal HFA is a state agency that had a very attractive loan program that's gone away. So we want to be able to find funding for affordable housing.
And then at the local level, you know, getting the developers to waive the deposits and rents, just work with us, you know, give somebody a donation and work directly with them, see if you can, you know, do what you can at the local level to pull on the heartstrings and get them to work with you. And then, the support services that assist consumers to be successful and care for the property. Again, based on the individual's needs, some of the things that we can do at the regional center level include supported living services and independent living services that can help provide the supports needed for a person to successfully live independently. But like I think Andrew was saying, we're also talking about a large number of people who are not regional center consumers. Okay, so how do we then identify what services and supports are available in the communities for all those individuals? How do we work closely with our family resource centers and other agencies, nonprofit agencies, in-home support services, a number of different resources to address that need, make sure folks have the service and supports they need to be successful living independently in the community. I just want to finalize real quickly. I was watching, I can't remember what documentary it was, some documentary the other day, and they were interviewing a guy, and he was talking about how his father always told him, everybody does better when everybody does better. And I just thought that that was so cool. What a great, and that's exactly what we're talking about. If it comes to employment, if it comes to health, if it comes to early intervention, if it comes to housing, yeah, everybody, our whole community, our whole state does better when everybody here does better. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Pamela Mary. All right, now it's your guys' turn. We'll open this to public comment, and if you raise your hand, I'll come to you. You have to hold the microphone close to your mouth. Okay.
Good enough? My name is Dr. Dave Pergament. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I've been caring for autistic children and adults on the spectrum for 25 years. And obviously, early intervention and treatment is probably the most important thing that we can do, simply because it puts less stress on the other systems as you go up the line. Currently, across the United States at 11 universities, including UC Davis, I believe, there is a trial being conducted, a phase 3 clinical trial, that involves the identification of a biomarker. Now, for those that don't know, a biomarker is a substance that the body makes. It's either too low or too high. And if it's either too low or too high, you've got this issue. And it's a way to screen what's going on. And it's thought that about 70% of the autistic spectrum has a biomarker called fecal chymotrypsin. This is an enzyme that's created by the body to help digest proteins. The drug that's being tested is CMAT, done by a company called Curemark. And the test itself can be done by any practitioner, but nobody really does it because nobody really knows about it yet. It's a stool sample. Take it to a lab. They test it. If they're low, they'll respond to the treatment, and if not, then they don't. So it's information for parents who have kids, particularly young kids, because some of the most severe autistic kids respond to this really well. I've been using these in my office since the late 1990s, and it finally came to fruition with a phase 3 clinical trial. So just for your information, thank you.
Anyone with a question for the panel?
Should I stand up?
Up to you.
I'm going through my list here. I've got a bunch of them. Okay.
Show the picture first.
Oh, okay. I'll show my picture of my son. I'll stand up. Okay. My name is Gabrielle Min. My husband Kurt is here with me. I told him to go get me clinics because I didn't know if I'd be able to talk through this. Our son Tyler, number 3, we have 2 older girls that are typically developing, and along came Tyler, and he was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. He is now 5, and he has been doing really well thanks to all of the programs that are available. Was he 2? I think he was 2 when I knew that they were 18 months old, when we knew there was something wrong. Convincing, that was mentioned, fighting with the doctors, convincing the doctors that there's something wrong, and that wasn't happening, and getting the schools involved, and even all of the support services that were coming to our home and giving us services, saying, oh, well, I don't know if he's autistic or not. Well, he shows this, but he doesn't show this or this. And so to get a diagnosis was difficult. Once he did get that diagnosis, he has been making strides, and now that that's in place. That being said, I am, what do I do for work? On the list of things that I do own my own business. Primarily, I am the at-home mom, and I take care of my kids, and when they're either at school or can give me a break, I can go work. But to hold down a full-time job outside of home, nearly impossible. And I want to find out what kind of legislation is in place or can be put in place to protect parents who need to go and address children, our needs, going to school events, attending programs such as this, support groups, parenting classes. That was another thing that was very frustrating for us, is we were finally given this diagnosis. Okay, your son has autism. Good luck with that. There was no, okay, here's now what you do. Here's how you parent an autistic child. There was none of that. I'm still not aware of anything that is available. So if a parenting class for how to work with your autistic child comes up, I did see a flyer or something in Napa coming up here next week, I think. Okay, but it's on Wednesday from 10 to 12. Work hours. How would parents otherwise be able to take time off of work and not get fired for going, I got something for my kid, I need to go to this. Well, you're taking a lot of time off. Welcome to the world of being a parent of an autistic special needs child. So we have legislature protecting breastfeeding mothers. We're not allowed to be fired because it takes us 20 minutes to pump milk for our baby. What about being allowed that time off and having a job protected because we need to take care of our children. So there was that one that I wanted to throw out.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Okay. I'm Ellie Cooper. I have a question as far as I have a son who is going to be 13 in July. He has attended Vacaville School since he was in kindergarten, and we knew something wasn't right, something wasn't, and so we fought and fought and fought, and they told me that it was my parenting skills. They told me that it was my family's home life. Stevie was diagnosed finally because of North Bay Regional Center, which we were not told about by the school either, with autism at the age of 11. I'm starting at the age of 11 and he's very high functioning, but I don't want to see this happen to other parents. And I know it is. I know I'm not the only one. I'm lost. 3 years old is when they're supposed to be. I'm dealing with an 11-year-old, and I don't know what to do.
Thank you.
I'm sure Chris from Matrix would love to talk to you. So,
I'll kind of is okay there. That's okay. That's not good. So that's one of the things that we do at Matrix is support parents who are going through this kind of thing. Some folks are here from our support group. It's once a month in Fairfield at the Matrix office in Fairfield. And what I've found for myself is that the best way to figure out how to handle our kids is to talk to other parents who have kids on the spectrum. And so that's what I do a lot of. And I absolutely agree. They don't hand you a manual when they hand you the diagnosis, and it drives me nuts. Instead, you have a million little bits of conflicting information if you go on the internet. And that's what you've got. And even if you go in the bookstore, same thing. You've got a few different mysterious sounding cures, and then you've got some advice, and a lot of it's conflicting, and so you have to make a decision of one thing over another. And the only thing that you know is you're told over and over again, early intervention. And well, okay, so then now what? I think that's a great question. Then they're older, and so now what? So we just give up? I mean, what do we do? And so it's an issue that really is tough, and there are parents out there dealing with it and talking about it. I try to tell myself that whatever I'm going through with my kids, it's going to make it easier for the kids that come after my kids. And that helps me feel a tiny bit better sometimes when I'm not in the middle of a kid throwing up because she ate a tube of diaper cream. So, it's tough, and there's not an easy answer. And what helps me as a parent is just knowing I'm not the only one out there dealing with it.
Before we take more questions, just a couple of quick comments. These are really excellent questions, and I think we would all appreciate if you would log on the website, either Senator Wokes or the Select Committee, and post your questions, and we can then disseminate them to the other task force chairs, and most importantly, try to get some answers. In terms of answers, with the question that was raised by Gabrielle with regards to employment and supports, there are a couple of thoughts that specifically come to mind. Number one, regional centers have in the past provided respite care. It hasn't been very much. Unfortunately, it looks like it's getting cut. So again, recognizing the problem and trying to mount a unified voice with regards to respite, I think is really, really crucial, because again, it underscores the importance of the points that you just made. As we probably all are aware of, there have been just these horrific cuts, over $60 billion over the past several years in social programs and healthcare programs, And this year we're looking at another $20 billion in cuts. And, you know, and unfortunately, the political climate is such that a significant number of legislators absolutely refuse to consider any increase in revenue, such as new taxes or reducing some of the breaks that certain companies and other groups are getting. So, I mean, I think we're part of this again is a political agenda, and I think that if we believe that our kids are more important than certain, that we believe our children are important and merit investments, I think our voices need to be heard. There is a Family Medical Leave Act that Don and I were just talking about, and we'll post information on that on the website, and that protects families who do need to take time away from work to care for their immediate family. So we'll post information on that as well. Yeah, we'll get the exact information. I think the point that you've made is a very, very good one. Any ideas that you all have in terms of how to address these issues, you know, and unfortunately, it takes money to provide respite. So we either have to be willing to bite the bullet and be willing to increase taxes, or we have to cut other programs. And I think that to the extent that we can work together in trying to solve these problems, I think it will create a better future for our children. With regards to the question about brain function with high-functioning children at older ages, I think the good news is indisputable evidence that the window for brain improvement does not automatically shut down at age 5 or 6, and that now there's indisputable evidence that brain plasticity extends well into the teenage years. And for those of us who have typically developing teenagers, I think that's a sign of encouragement, as well as for those of us that that have kids who are on the spectrum. So I think that it's certainly at I believe your child was 11 or 12. 12. That is certainly an age, and particularly in the area of social interaction, relationships, and developing social skills program. Yeah, it doesn't have any. Those are really, really critical, important, and again, we really have to support those.
Just to follow up on that last comment, with the state budget cuts that occurred last summer, there was a prohibition on regional centers purchasing for camp, for social and recreational services, and so those are frozen at the moment. There also was limits put on respite. I think it's 90 hours a quarter, David. So there was those particular things, services that really benefit families, and services that really are critical to adolescents and young children developing their social interaction skills. Those were hit hard by the budget, and they're in place still. So that's. Max, the bad news.
Thank you, Bob. What else? Talk closely to that.
Hi, my name is Chandra. I own the Fairfield Grocery Outlet. We have 28 employees. Last year, we got an award from Solano County for hiring and fostering disabled kids. It was given to us by the mayor. We've been doing that for the last 13 years that we've been running businesses in Solano County. We had the Vacaville store for 10 years. I am also the mother of 2 disabled children. My son is 17 and my daughter she'll be turning 15 in a couple of months. The extent of my daughter's disabilities, she's in a private school, ANOVA, in American Canyon. Yesterday I was on call for most of the day because she had escaped from school and was on the side of Highway 29, just about to run out in the middle of the street because she was overstimulated. My son hopefully will be okay and will be graduating next year, but he's really struggling also. So it's been a very long road, and we have not given up on the children, but we have been working with a lot of people. And I can tell you firsthand, when we do get people brought in from the transitional services, we are not told what's coming in. The only way I'm able to work with some of these kids that come in is because of my experience helping out in all of the books that I've been reading. I don't know what I am getting. A child that I was brought in, well, a 19-year-old I was brought in last year was a schizophrenic. I did not pick up on it. I thought it was autism. It's very, very close, the bad eye contact and the poor social skills. And so I assumed I was working with an autistic. And we got him out on the sales floor, and I tried to keep where he was working quiet. I kept the sensory levels down, and we were doing okay for about the first week. They changed who he was working with, and you know, things flipped on us, and the kid went through a really bad situation, and so did we. And my employees didn't understand what was happening. The parents were very devastated, and so were we. Parents didn't want anybody to know, and you know, the transitional team couldn't do anything about it because the information couldn't received. A gentleman that just started with me this last Tuesday, the same situation. I am not privy to what the situation is. We're just going to do the best that we can. He's got a great personality and he's a good kid. But as I was signing the papers, she said, oh yeah, there's been a budget freeze. You probably won't be reimbursed for another 3 months. You can't expect employers to float money for 3 months for these children. It's very difficult. We're all running tight budgets. If you are going to try and encourage people to hire disabled kids and work with them and work them up to where they need to be, and they're not at a level where they have the social cognition and the skill level, and they're not able to contribute right off the bat because you've cut the programs that are teaching them their social skills, and you've cut a lot of the things before they get to the point to where they're in the work programs. We're going to have to do a lot of work on our end, and you're going to have to do it the right way. Some of these transitional people that come in and work with these kids are a joke. We've actually asked some of them to leave. It's that bad. Some of them, their English is really bad. And you have people that have auditory processing problems that can't understand normal English very well, and they're trying to understand somebody that can't speak English. I mean, it's impossible for these poor kids to make it. So if you're wondering why you have a 70% unemployment rate with disabled kids, that's probably your reason. The other thing is we need to take the handcuffs off our teachers and teach them the signs of autism. So when these kids, like your 11-year-old, hit kindergarten and first grade, they're allowed to speak up. There is somebody holding those purse strings in special education, and they have a budget. They can only spend so much money on these kids. They're only allowed to do so much. And when our kids hit kindergarten and they're not working with the other kids and they're just sitting there, like my daughter was sitting there like a zombie, and when I started helping out in the class, I was the one starting to bring it to the attention, and it wasn't until the second grade. 2 years of fighting and 1 year of her being held back and having her tested twice for IEPs that I finally got her an IEP, and it wasn't as an autistic. She actually just got diagnosed as an autistic 6 months ago. So, I mean, it's a pretty messed up system, and these teachers cannot speak out, and the teachers are our front line. Sorry, probably overdid it.
Thank you. No, you didn't. Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Could we have a show of hands of how many in the audience have contacted an elected official in Sacramento?
About autism?
No, just about anything that you've. That's great. That is really, really great. Now, how many of you have asked your friends, neighbors, colleagues, to also contact someone in Sacramento? That's really impressive. Again, I have to congratulate, but there were some in the audience who didn't raise their hands. And again, I think that the wonderful comments that we've heard tonight really underscore the problem that we know what the problems are, and I think a lot of times we know the solutions. Now the challenge is how to get it done. How to get it done. You know, when I first started working at the Capitol, which was about 10 years ago, I did a variety of healthcare issues, and one of the things that we were doing at that time, it was Senator John Burton was the pro tem, and I was working for him, and we were confirming all of the wardens who were in charge of the 31 state prisons, and during that period of time, I visited 18 of the state prisons throughout the state, and it was an eye-opening experience. And there's no doubt that the prison guards undoubtedly have an incredibly difficult, challenging, and awesome task, and they do a wonderful job. But they're also very, very effective in terms of their message, how they package their message, and the political support that they have. I do not mean this in any way to disparage them or to in any way cast any negative reflections, but I learned what amazed me during those 2 years that I was doing prison visits was that prison guards with a high school education and a 14-week academy training were making over $71,000 starting salary plus benefits. And what, I mean, you know, I was really impressed. What I also learned was that they had tremendous political support and that they were able to have a certain message that resonated with elected officials, and they spoke as one voice. I think very often when we're talking about disabilities, when we're talking about issues that relate to underserved populations, we all have our own issues, and when you start talking to elected officials in 10 different voices, very often we tune each other out. So again, the points that have been made here tonight are incredibly important. They're very powerful, and there's a lot of good ideas and thoughts. Again, I think in I know that in Senator Wolk, and other members of, and Senator Steinberg, my boss, we have truly dedicated public servants that share in your ideals, that share in your aspirations for our families and for our communities, but we need to support their efforts. It's not Senator Wolk and it's not Senator Steinberg who are against raising taxes. It's not Senator Steinberg and Senator Wolk who are looking for additional funding to serve the social programs, to fund the early identification, to provide employment supports. So again, when you leave here tonight, please continue your advocacy, please continue your dedication, but also reach out to your friends and neighbors, reach out to people that you go to church with, people that you're in the PTA with, people that you're in the Rotary Club or whatever organizations. There are probably a number of individuals that use social networking. Again, our kids and our future are so important and so intertwined. The fact that you're here tonight, the fact that you have these great ideas, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to work with the members that are here from your community and to really, really continue this passion and dedication that you have here to translate it into a political reality. So thank you, and I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Dick.
I know that Alicia Miller, she's the transition specialist with the Solano County Office of Education, and I know that she's worked really closely with this employer, and so I know that she would be really interested, and I know she's talking to somebody else right now, and I didn't get the name of the employer. Oh no, I was just going to address, I just wanted to let you know that Alicia Miller is the transition specialist with Solano County Office of Education, and I know that she would be very interested to talk to you about your concerns because she coordinates the employment services that work with your business in the county, and so I would really recommend that you speak with her because I think she would really want to hear that. I know if that was a program, an employer that was working with the program I work with, I would really want to sit down with you and brainstorm how we can make that better, because that's what we are here for.
transitional services, and he's tried to go in there to talk to her, and she's called me. She says, I'm not even supposed to be helping him, but if you can get him to come to me, you know, I'll put him in the work corps. I can get him a spot. I'll come on my own time. I'll drive him down there. And I just can't get this kid because he's just disabled to the point where he's just not going to. And so he's just living at the mission. And the kinds of people living at the mission, some of them are really, really rough. And I'm really worried about him. I'm glad he's 6'2", but still, you know, it's really sad that the parents just walked out on him like that. And the worst thing is his mother works in the PRO program as an assistant, which is for disabled kids. And we ended up firing her because she had a drinking problem. So, you know, it's pretty messed up. It's a pretty messed up system.
Take just a couple more, and then we have to close up.
I just have a very quick question. My name is Melanie Green. I'm a special education teacher and have been for 13 years. I always have parents ask me for resources and support, and I'm not always great at knowing what resources are available. And so I would love to come up with a way to sort of streamline that information. Yes, I will sometimes get little flyers and I'll put them in the box, but let's be honest, if you have a child that's taking a lot of your time and you're working, a flyer's not going to do it. What would be more helpful is if I said, Matrix is offering a social skills group for kids from 5 to 10 this Saturday. They would hear me then. So if anyone could help me with that, I'd really appreciate it, or come up with a way to sort of get the message to school systems and teachers, because we do want to help.
Absolutely. That's actually it's a really easy one. We can do that like now. So I'm excited. Okay, so these are out front, and any that are left at the end, just take them, okay? Because we have a lot. So on here is our helpline, which is our 800 number. 9 to 3 Monday through Thursday is a live person. The rest of the time you leave a message and we call back. We get back to people pretty quickly. And then there's our website right underneath. Our website has all the information, all the printed information that we have available. We have information packets on different disabilities and on different topics like speech therapy and behavior problems and things like that. And there's a calendar section. We have all of our events, and we also have events from anywhere else around the community. We're a public clearinghouse of information, so we have all this stuff already in one place. So you don't have to do it. All you have to do is send them to Matrix, to our website, or if they don't have computer access, you can send them to the 800 number.
Wait, just. I think it's a great idea, but if you go to Matrix and click on their website, you're going to leave us out of the loop. So, here's my suggestion. Why, first of all, anyone who has ideas or questions or whatever, come either to Senator Woke's website or come to the Senate Select Committee. We're intertwined and we can both access the same system. So it's an integrated system whether you go to Senator Woke's website or whether you go to the Senate Select Committee website. It's all part of the same database. Put your questions, put your ideas, put your recommendations. What we'll do is we will work with the NBART leadership and with Chris and with other folks, and what we'll do is we will post links to all of the various questions, resources, et cetera, that are in this region, and then we will post the links on our website to Chris, et cetera. So again, we can all work together towards an integrated approach. Would that work for you, Chris?
Have you seen our website?
No?
Check out our website first.
No, but that's not the point. That really, with all due respect, it's not the point. The point is that we need to share information, and we need to come together. And what I think would be very effective is for us to post a link to your website on the autism, and we're delighted and happy to do that. We'll say, you know, Matrix is doing such and such. If you're interested in these programs, click here, and it'll take you to your website. But I think that to the extent that we can work together and integrate our resources and share information, it will help us deal with the issues that have been identified. Yeah. Does anybody have any? I mean, there's no proprietary hubris as far as I'm concerned. What we need to do is to work together to solve problems, and if there's a better way to solve this problem, I'm all for it. So if anybody doesn't like the idea of having resources linked on a common site. If there's a better way to do it, speak up, please.
I don't think that there's a problem with having linked to the website. Sorry, I have a big voice, so I don't microphone. I think I'm sorry, what was your name again? Melanie. It's the simplicity of her as a teacher saying, here, moms, dads, you want to go to a website. Here's Matrix. They have a program that's there. It's not about not working together. It's just more of a more simple way of just saying, hey, look, here Monday through Thursday, here's a program. Friday through this, something that they can go to, instead of having like a big old website where there's links and you're going to get lost in it. Sometimes you'll get lost in it. I think it's a great idea is working together. I don't think any of us would be thinking that that's a negative thing. We all work together, but with something like that in a situation where parents are just wanting to get quick information of where can we go and making it a little bit more simple.
The only point that I would make and argue for is that you may have some great ideas, and the questions and the issues and the recommendations that you have might be able to help a teacher who perhaps doesn't have your perspective, doesn't have your experience. And again, if we're going to solve the problems that have been identified today and that we feel so passionately about, we do need to find systems and mechanisms and approaches that are going to be able to have us speak as one voice. And any way we can do that, I am completely supportive of and look forward to working with all of you.
Sure. I also think, Dr. Vismar, isn't it when it goes through this website that you guys are also collecting data that then can be put into laws? So that's kind of the...
My livelihood is usage and working within internet, and so my suggestion is that statistics and data gathering data mining is very easily accessible, and you can share that information with access to data mining facilities, data mining technologies. They can, like the Matrix can agree to share that information with you. It can be interconnected without having to have like an overseeing website. It can just be shared.
Tell us how to do that.
We don't have...
I'll discuss it with
you. Really. How we get there.
Thank you, Kurt.
Hi, my name is Omar. I actually work in Senator Wilk's office. I'm an intern. All I wanted to say is just to go back to that point of the political reality of it, and it just strikes me as so important that this is definitely a topic among many to bring up to candidates coming up this November in the gubernatorial election, because while there are warriors working for the kinds of serious issues as autism, such as Senator Wolk and Senator Steinberg, a bill doesn't sign itself into law from the Senate. And on that note, to urge the candidates that are coming up, I believe is really important, because someone is going to be sitting in that seat coming up in these coming months, and so just to keep that point in our heads is so critical, because the governor should not have the power to cross his or her pen into a line of the budget that the governor is partly responsible for, that has money appropriated to go to things such as this, expanding programs for things like better training for individuals who want to work, or individuals that could be very young in school and need to be recognized early on, so they don't have to suffer longer than necessary. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. One more, last one.
I want
want to say thank you for everyone for coming out here. I am a mother of an autistic son. He's now 9. He was diagnosed at the age of 4.5. Only with the persistence of my husband and I pushing the buttons of the doctors and the system in place held us back. But we persisted. We had that gut instinct. I'm telling everybody in here, yes, we're here for a reason, but you know many, many people that might have a son or a daughter or a nephew that might be autistic. It's you that can make the difference in their life, because we have already been dealing with this battle. You need to educate. It's about networking. I'm all about networking. I always bring up my family, and I always ask the questions. So, you know, do you have children? Or I talk about my son and the symptoms he had that no one could figure out. Well, as an autistic, having an autistic son, and I'm sure there's out here that daughters and sons are like, but nutrition was a huge battle. They have that texture thing. My son, chicken nuggets, hot dogs, french fries, all of his life since the age of 4. When he was younger, it was fine. He would eat anything I put in front of him. But it came to a point that's all he would eat. Of course, there's a nutritional deficit in his body, and I know that. And I know as a growing child, they need really good nutrition. I know that's something that's not been really addressed here tonight, and that's something I need to bring up. Nutritional is a big thing in their life. Well, let me tell you something. I'm in the healthcare field, and I knew I needed to force something in him to get the nutrition that he needs to help him develop, whether it made a difference with the autism or not. He needed to have nutrition. I was able to get him to eat smoothies, frozen fruits and yogurts, and that was a huge thing. And then I started sneaking in the smoothie vitamins. Of course, vitamins out there, I don't know if you know this, really don't have a good absorption rate. They might have a high solubility rate, but they don't have a good nutritional absorption rate. Well, I found a company called Melaleuca. I'm not advertising Melaleuca, but if you can find a company like Melaleuca that has a high absorption rate, it can make a difference in your son or daughter's life or an adult life. I'm going to give you a quick story. I don't know this lady's name, but I belong to a networking group of ladies and men that belong to Melaleuca, and I'm a customer of Melaleuca. They have all natural products. And I get these little stories, and there was a mother of 2 autistic sons. 2 sons, 2 brothers that did not interact with each other. They played or interacted with the mom, and it was at a very little level. When they would go to the doctor's appointments, the brothers would never look at the doctor, would never talk to each other, never, let alone answer questions that the doctor may have had directly to the boys. Well, the mother got the sons on these Melaleuca vitamins, have a high absorption rate. Well, they would not eat them, so she had to crush them up in a tablet crusher and put them in orange juice or whatever they would drink or eat and give it to them. Well, she started this process for about 2 months. In 2 months, they completely changed. They went from nonverbal contact, non-eye contact, to changing completely from, hi, how are you, in 2 months, talking to people, looking at them, interacting with each other. So I think a huge nutritional deficit can be changed. And it may not give you that result, but that's something to look at. My son, by the way, since I've been giving him vitamins like this, he has also improved dramatically in 2 years. He's still behind. He's still growing with the help of the whole system. But I will tell you, it's something you need to look at is nutritional. If you have to sneak it in, whatever you can, please do it. And I'm an optimist. And one thing, as far as a hopeful thing to look at, Michael Phelps, I don't know if this is true, he's on the autism spectrum order. So give you some hope out there. Look at Michael Phelps. Thank you.
All right. I'd love to introduce Dr. Maher, who's one of the co-chairs for the committee.
Okay, so Bob and I would like to thank you very much for everyone coming. And I just want to quickly go over the timelines, though, because this NBART in the legislation, there is timelines to it. The NBART work groups need to come up with their recommendations by June 28th. So if anyone has input, please get a hold of the co-chair of each of the work groups, depending on what area you're interested in. and give them any input that you would like. And you can get their names and contact information through the Senate Select Committee under North Bay Autism Regional Task Force. The next thing that after the 28th, the recommendations from each of the task force go to the State Coordinating Council, which will convene in July, and from there they will come up with recommendations to the Senate Select Committee in September. The senators from the Senate Select Committee will then draft legislation, and that will be coming out in the 2011 calendar year. And so at that point, we're going to be calling on you again. We have your contact information now that you signed in, to contact your legislature members to lobby for this legislation. So that's kind of the timetable. But also, as people were talking about, I think it was mostly Pamela and Mary, that there is sort of the state legislation process that's occurring, but there's also the local level. And the local level is, there's a number of opportunity for everyone to participate. There is the Autism Community Team. We have a website, actnorthbay.org, which is a partnership of members in our 3 counties that are working to improve services. And so that's one opportunity. There's also Matrix, there's the Housing Coalition, and there's the number of TACA, there's the Minus, there's a lot of other places where people can also participate, but really do try to participate. So once again, I'd like to thank everybody. And Bob, do you want to say anything? No? Okay. Okay. Anyway, so great. I really enjoyed seeing everybody come out tonight. Okay.